Hello, everyone. Welcome to Headway School for Giftedness webinar series. And today, our topic would be understanding and accommodating exceptionalities. During the talk, we'd like to invite you to comment your questions if you have any, and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion of the talk. So, to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, he is finishing his master's degree in clinical psychology at De La Salle University. He earned his bachelor's degree in psychology at the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He also took further studies in Filipino Sign Language student program at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, as well as applied behavior analysis at the Florida Institute of Technology. He also earned his certificate of professional education at the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. He is also a behavioral consultant and therapist at Bridges Child Development Program, a behavioral expert for 17 years. Let us all welcome our esteemed speaker this afternoon. He actually spoke with us before. I think that was September or October. So let us all welcome our speaker for this afternoon, Mr. Mark David Magbanua. Sir Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that very warm welcome, Sir Al. As you mentioned, this is my second time in the webinar platform, and I'm very thankful for you guys, the Headway team, for having me again. And yeah, welcome to all the parents and the teachers and to all the viewers. First of all, I'd like to greet my mom. Happy birthday. She's 65 now. She's in heaven, and I hope that she's watching there right now. And my Lola too. She's 89, very strong, very lively, and will get the lechon that they're expecting. Happy birthday! So yeah, I'm here to discuss something that I think is very important on how we can actually bring out the best in our students, in the children in the school, whether it's in the school setting, whether it's in a therapy setting. And this is actually how we can start and initiate the help that any child would need. So I'm here to discuss. I mean, as the title itself, it's understanding and accommodating exceptionalities. So towards the end, what I'm hoping to share with you guys is for us to realize that in every time that we have to deal with children, with kids, with exceptionalities, with special needs, with typical growing students and kids, we must equip ourselves with a proper identification, a proper understanding on how we can better help them. Not just as therapists, but as teachers as well, as the parents as well, and for every member of the team, the intervention team that a child would be having. So we can begin now. So look at this first picture. Imagine a classroom with a lot of things going on. Like kids are getting rowdy, running here and there, chit-chatting here and there. And it seems like the teacher is not able to very well manage the class. I mean, I'm not being how do you call it? I'm not exaggerating. I mean, this happens every day. This happens in the real setting, especially in many different classrooms. So I mean, this kind of somehow starts to become a concern, not just for the teachers, for the parents as well, for sure. And it just seems like no matter how much trick we do or the teacher will do, is that it just doesn't work. So let's go for a different setting. Now this time it could be the one-on-one therapy session. It could be a one-on-one tutorial, whether at home, whether in school, whether in any tutorial centers. And at one point, somewhere, somehow, the therapist or the teacher would somehow feel lost, getting lost along the way when it comes to the program, when it comes to presenting the materials, presenting the lessons, trying to implement the activities, and that no matter how much they try to troubleshoot and do a trial and error, uh, there is this something that was kind of missing in every program. And what's worse is that uh, one day it does, one day it doesn't. So the question here actually is, um, do we really know our students? Do we really know what the kids would need from us as teachers and as therapists, as implementers? Do we really understand the nature of their responses? Do we really uh, uh, know their learning styles, which level they're at, what kind of prompting would they need, what kind of assistance? Uh, it goes on and on. I mean, what kind of materials would they need? And when I say, do we really know them? What I meant was, do we really know them by heart? So I can always remember every time I'm with my colleagues, like some teachers and some therapists, like I would always challenge them that if, let's say, something happens to a child in the middle of the night, for example, and if I wake them up while they're sleeping, would they be able to answer me if I ask which level of prompt do I need to implement just for this child, for example, to answer a specific question, or let's say to do a specific task? So I mean, that's what I meant when knowing these kids by heart, that no matter what we do, no matter where we are at any given Sunday, is that we'll be able to accommodate them and to answer the questions that would help them along the way. So this is where the understanding and identification would come in. This is the first step. This is what's actually gonna get us started. And when we start, of course, we have to start it right. I mean, we can't just start anything without really knowing what's going on. It's like we cannot, especially with dealing with children. I mean, we cannot do things half-heartedly. You know, if we want to start, we want to start it right. We want to do with a full heart, and in that way, we're gonna be confident on the intervention or any teachings that we want them to learn. Like we cannot just accept a child in school and put him in a class without really knowing how much, let's say, language does the child have, without knowing how much understanding would he have, how much well he can read, how much well he can do numbers. um, we cannot just accept a child and initiate a therapy session without understanding their behavior first. And so whenever we inquire, whether it's for school admission, whether it's to initiate therapy services, or any other interventions, the first thing that they'll ask you, the first thing that we're going to ask, is for your child to get assessed. And yeah, believe it or not, there are many different kinds of assessments, that you can name off. I'm sure all of you parents, all of your teachers have been to a lot of assessments, has been to has been asked a lot of questions, and at some point we just want to hit it right. We just want to get our questions answered, get things to get done right in the beginning. And of course, the goal for that is for us to really get to know your child. So the different types of assessments, I've just listed a few. I'm sure there are a lot more. The first one is we have formal assessments versus informal assessments. Like when you come to a school, probably I could say it formal. If let's say you come to a school, you come to a center, and they'll ask you to write forms, and they'll get to interview you. Uh, Versus the informal ones where, let's say, a parent would just phone you and try to let you know what's going on. You kind of ask questions and get the information as much as you need. We also have a direct form of assessment and an indirect form of assessment. So the direct form could be, let's say, me observing and interacting the child directly. I mean, the person who would need to be assessed. The indirect assessment could be me getting the information, let's say, from the third party, let's say the parents, the teachers, the therapists, the guardians, the caregivers, or whoever it is that's dealing with the person who's being assessed. But I am not directly having that interaction with the child. Also have the quantitative and qualitative assessment. I'd go for the latter. I'm heavy on having a qualitative assessment, because this is where I can actually get a lot of information. Although I agree that there are settings where a quantitative assessment, like assessments, tests that would require a representation of numbers is needed. So yeah, I mean, and at some point, we can all have this all together all at once, just for us to really know what's happening. And of course, I mean, the end goal is for us to get to know your child, not just us but you parents as well. I remember there's one uh, comment from the parent. She actually told me, actually just earlier, telling me that the way we've done the assessment with the help of everyone, the family members, the school teachers, it's like that's the only time that we've kind of hit the right target for that child. Like coming from many different types of intervention, of therapy, of approaches and strategies. So yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, it's very important for us to get to know your child. In that way, we can always help you with the best that we can. So I've listed some steps. I'm not saying that these are like the steps by default on how to assess a child, but I've kind of listed a few that I think is important, and that I think would work. I mean, like what Sir Al mentioned, being in the field for about 17 years. So I just want to share what I think is the best combination of different kinds of assessment, different types of identifying your child. So yeah, the first is to gather information. So like what I've mentioned earlier, it could be formal, it could be informal. It could just be having a coffee together and sitting down, having this casual talk and gathering information, asking some questions, and as much as you would want to have for you to be able to identify the skills that you want for this child to learn. So this is when you get to hear them, you get to hear their concerns, You get to hear what worries them, what kind of help would they need, and so on. So the second one is to schedule an observation. And in my personal opinion, um, the very first observation, what I always tell the parents, what I always tell the teachers if I have to observe a child in a classroom, what I always tell the parents if I have to visit their house uh, to have an observation, is for them not to inform the child that he or she is being watched. Because I mean, like, let's admit it, these kids could be very tricky. Like, what I mean, even as adults, I mean, if we know that we are being watched, if we know that we are being supervised, I mean, we tend to somehow change the way we respond. We don't know, probably it's kind of some people could be showing off, some but again, the bottom line of this is for having an observation in an uncontrolled setting is for us to get the natural responses, for us to get the raw responses from the child without being affected by the presence of the observer, without being affected by the information that the parent might say that, okay, hey, teacher Mark's coming and he's gonna watch you, so you have to be a good boy. So I mean, in that kind of situation, it's gonna become an observation still, but somehow it's in a controlled condition na. Kasi there is something that's controlling the child's responses. Uh, it could be the presence of the observer. It could be the materials that we're gonna use. It could be the setting that we're gonna have. So, but again, as by all means, if we want to to combine this all together, that's completely okay, as long as uh, the goal is for us to really get to know the kids, the children. We will have to do it. The next one is having a direct interaction. So this is when a very typical scenario where you'll bring your child to the school. They'll sit on the table and chair having a pencil and paper exam. This is when a therapist would interact with the child, present flashcards. If let's say I want to know how much vocabulary he has. Let's say if I throw a bunch of toys and I want to know the level of play skill does the child have. So that's the direct interaction that I'm kind of trying to say. I'll give you a perfect example. um, I've held once an assessment, and uh, so that's how it went. Uh, I've received the information from the parents. It started with a phone call. Actually, it started with a text. Like setting up a conversation. Actually, it got very casual in the beginning, um, just for me to see what help I can offer, and then I started to come in for observation. In the beginning, it's just like me looking from outside while they're having a class, just for me not to affect the way the child responds. And the child, after that, I had to schedule another observation where I have put some variables where the child response could be affected and changed. It's like like a kind of trial and error. Let's say, for example, if I wanted to know if a child would share a toy that he's currently playing with, I could pop in and tell the child that, hey, can you share the toy to Michael, for example, because he's been waiting for you to share it with him. So that's when I wanted to see if the child will respond properly, or the child would not respond at all. So that's actually the goal of that. It's actually trying to deduct one by one all possible stimuli that affect the responses of these kids. So yeah, let's go ahead. Of course, I mean, for us to do the assessment, our goals will always be to answer the questions, the questions would the questions that any parent would have, the questions that any teacher would have. Why is this behavior happening? Why is this behavior not happening? Why is the child not understanding what I am trying to teach? Why is the child, let's say, getting very active and jumpy when, let's say, a certain activity is on? Why is the child not paying attention to what I say? So all of these questions, the whys, the what, the hows, and the whens, the goal for us when we're doing the assessment is to answer these questions as much as we can. uh, and the parents would normally ask us regarding the assessment, teacher, how long should the assessment be? And the answer is we we don't really put a timeline on that, because to be honest, assessment would go from one day to another, that you just keep on going and going and going. And I always tell the parents, I always say the teachers, that the assessment never stops. It never stops. I mean, one thing could lead to another, which would need probably a different type of assessment, probably not as intensive as the beginning. But yeah, that's what I want you to understand, that it never stops. As much time needed for us to do, we'll do it by all means. If we need to come to your house, we need to ask you to bring your child to the center, or to put him in a controlled condition environment where we can see the responses of the child over and over again, is that we would have to do it. As your program moves, the child moves as well, the targets would move as well. So that's how, I mean, I'm making it sound very complicated, but it requires a lot of understanding, and it requires a lot of patience for that. So yeah. Another goal for doing an assessment is for us to have a better judgment. Like what I've said, we can't just easily tell you what to do, unless we know your child very well. We cannot give out a recommendation uh, just by probably asking a single question. Um, it doesn't work like that. It it provides us the right way to implement the right approach, the best intervention that we can do. We can give out the accurate recommendations and suggestions, um, um, and to sum this all up, it's for us to be able to provide your child a tailor fit program. So when I say tailor fit, it's not, I mean, a program, a lesson, a curriculum. Um, uh, I believe that it has to be child specific. It's not like a recipe book where you'll open and you'll read that, okay, this is the behavior target, or this is the behavior plan that we want, that has been implemented with one child. That doesn't mean that it's going to work to another child. So what I meant with tailor fit is that the target skills are accurate, the intervention and strategies and approach is meant for the child itself. So in other words, it's in the school we call it the individualized educational plan. So that's what we're gonna discuss in a little bit while. So yeah, I mean, that's what we wanted. I mean, you have a tailor fit program. You have a teacher and a therapist with the better understanding for the child. Then I think, I mean, that's something that we can start with, again, by with on how we can better advance the program and help your child. So yeah, having a tailored fit program now, this is when we can start to accommodate, to modify, and to intervene. So accommodating a child in any given setting, whether it's school, whether it's a therapy setting, one-on-one or a group setting, it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of uh, uh, understanding on what is and what's not. So the types of materials that we want to use, uh, we have to consider that. The type of, let's say, in other cases, the type of the level of volume of your voice should be considered as well. The setting, let's say the lighting, the placement of toys in school, where a child would sit, how, let's say, the table is positioned in order for the child to access the curriculum very well. And having a tailor fit program will give us the chance to have a modified approach. Let's say child A is having let's say an activity where he would write 1 to 10, and child B, unfortunately, who is not able to hold a pencil very well, it won't be fair if we're gonna ask them to do the same thing. So probably if you want to modify that, one child who has a perfect fine writing skills and the other child having a very poor writing skills. So probably if I want to work on one goal of having them identify the numbers, one would be writing and one could probably be pointing or handing out a flashcard um, that would represent the number that you're going to ask for. And then, yes, you can have your intervention the best way that you can. And so, yeah, as I've mentioned earlier, in the schools, it's called the Individualized Educational Plan. It's being The term is being used as well in how do you call that, in having probably one-on-one therapy sessions, but we call it more of the behavior intervention plan. And having said being said behavior, that doesn't mean the behavior, let's say, a negative, because I mean normally there are misconceptions when you hear the word behavior. The behavior could be anything. Writing is a behavior, reading is a behavior, raising your hand is a behavior. But again, on the other side, the behavior like hitting, kicking, crying, throwing a tantrum. So any type of action, of behavior or response from a child, that will be included in there. So let me just go through a little bit on some points between these two. So the individualized educational plan, it consists of the goals. Of course, we're going to have to write what we want to achieve at the end of the school year. Not probably, if you're having short-term goals, we're going to write as well the things that we want to achieve in a matter of months, for example, or weeks, if that's how short the goals should be set. It requires the strategies as well on let's say on how the teacher will implement the lesson, on how the materials would be modified in regards to the level of the understanding and functioning of the child. So I'm going to give you a quick example. When again, let's go back to reading, for example. Let's say the class for today is for the kids to read at least 10 words, but then you have this one child who's struggling, who is starting to read palang. So you may want to give that child who struggles with words that are easier for him to read. Let's say you can start with the CVC, like a 3-letter word or a 4-letter word, compared to the other kids who's having like 5, 6, 7-letter word for them to read. So in that way, you are working on the same goals, same reading activity, but the strategy that you have for this child, for him to be able to be successful and respond and perform in a way that you want him to, is to cut down the expectation, probably cut down the demand, modify it, and start to work your way up. So it's easier than that. It's easier than than working on a very big goal, and then when you struggle somewhere somehow, you're gonna start to go down and 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 sort out what's really happening. So if we sort out in the beginning, we know what's happening with the child. We can start small. So it's like we call it the baby steps. You start small and you start to go up one by one. So that's one strategy that a teacher can have in the classroom. I've seen another classroom where there we are teaching a child to identify his name as he enters the classroom, and to somehow make himself present with the teacher. So we'll put up a picture of him right by the door with his name on it, so that when he comes in, he'll see his picture, he'll be able to match his name, take it out, and come give it to the teacher. So in that way, uh, 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 the strategy of the teacher to teach a child a specific skill is happening in that way. Later on, I'll show you a specific example of not really an IEP, but a behavior intervention plan that was working best for the home therapy session and for the school setting. An individualized educational plan would also consist of a mastery criteria. I mean, this is like if the child reaches 100 words to read, then we'll start to shift into reading a sentence. If the child is able to let's say ask another child help, if he needs to open, let's say, his lunchbox, then we move to another criteria. So again, it's the assessment that keeps going and going and going and going every time. Like what I've said, as the child moves, the program progresses. um, I remember one mom who was very concerned about not having the program of their child advanced, and I felt that there was kind of lag that happened right there, that when they thought that okay, the child already learned the skill that we want them to learn, they didn't expect that there's another skill that's gonna come out that needs an intervention somehow. So it's like they've focused on the initial targets, and then they kind of not moved on to better advance the program. So that's, and then of course, I mean, somewhere along the way, the skill that has been taught regressed, and then somehow the behavior got worse. It's because of not actually having the constant assessment, like how I've mentioned earlier. So here's the behavior intervention plan, and I want to be heavy on this. This is something that I would normally be equipped with when we initiate therapy intervention, therapy services for the child. And of course, I mean, in partnership with Headway. So we're kind of combining the IEP coming from them, the behavior plan, the behavior intervention plan coming from us, and working best for these children. So a behavior intervention plan would consist of a target behavior. I'll show you a perfect example later. This lists the behaviors that you want to get rid of. Like more on, let's say, if the child is just requesting using one word, or if the child is let's say throwing a tantrum, and it got a little bit of definition with that. um, Another part are the antecedent modifications, where this is where we start to modify the environment, the things that we use, the materials needed, the prompting that we need to have. Um, we'll have the replacement behavior. So this is what we're hoping to change somehow. And the consequence manipulation, where like the type of rewards that you're going to use, the type of reinforcements that you're going to use, whether it could be a tangible reinforcement, or let's say as just a social praise. I mean, if you're going to have to ignore it, let me share you now uh, the example. This is like a specific example. I've blackened out the name of the child for confidentiality reasons, but I just want you to start to understand how a behavior plan would normally look like. Sorry, Sir Al.
Here you go. So it's showing up.
Okay.
Let me just
Sir,
name.
can we blow this up? I mean, I have a different file which maybe can
Ah, okay. Yeah, sure, sure. Hold on.
not in the PowerPoint.
Is this the file, teacher Mark? I am the one showing on screen. This one.
I think this is the PowerPoint. Oh no, in the screen.
Yeah, this one.
Yes, yes, yes. This is it.
Opening it in. Okay. There you go. Here.
Okay. So let me just get my own copy then. Sir, would it be okay for you to just, if I as I read along, maybe we can just start to browse it down.
Okay, sure, sure. So I'll scroll it down.
Okay. So this sample intervention plan is for a little girl. She's very sweet, very lovely. I think when we handled her back in 2018, she was 4, from what I can remember. She's having a hard time accessing the curriculum of the nursery or the preschool that she's in, um, mainly because of her not being able to communicate herself when she desires one thing. And I mean, like, for a 4 year old, 5 year old, I mean, the desires could just be as simple as playing with her dolls, let's say getting a cookie, and that kind of affected the way the child performed in school. That she won't be able to communicate herself to the teacher. So uh, there you see her grab a lot. You would see her um, just use a one word when. So I'm gonna have to read it. Give me a minute. So we're also fixing it. There, Sir Al. How can I live without you? Okay. So yeah, if you parents and teachers, I mean, if you're okay, I'll try to read it, and I mean, if you have questions, feel free to ask. I mean, you can cut me somewhere along the way. Yeah, sir, are we able to read that?
Yep, yep.
If there are questions.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
can read there. Yes.
Okay. So if you look at the first box, it says the target behavior number 1. So we have defined, we've clustered this behavior as one function, uh, being a behavior maintained through tangible reinforcement. So tangible reinforcement, it means that if the child wants something, if the child wants to access something that is not accessible at the time, so it would be the behavior is being reinforced, by a form of communication in whatever form. So it happened that with this child, the way for her to communicate her needs is through grabbing, through using one word, and up to a phrase requesting. So there's no a full sentence yet. There's no gaining attention of the person that she would want to request one item from. And then the prompt dependency was there. So she would just kind of step back and wait for the teacher or the therapist or the caregiver to give the prompt before she would actually initiate to say give cookie, or let's say go pee pee, or let's say play doll. So these are the behaviors that we want to improve: the grabbing, one word phrase requesting, and the prompt dependency. So it could be we want to completely eliminate this behavior, we want to replace these behaviors, or we want to maintain and improve this kind of behaviors. So we'll go ahead. The second box would say the antecedent modification. So this is where the prompting and modifying us writing the approach for the child. So the first point is the functional communication training. So it's for us, for her, that we were able to identify her level of communication to us. So having said in the beginning, it's just a one word, and it's just up to a phrase communication. So now this is when we are able to identify where do we begin. So now we're gonna begin. If you see what's the highlighted one, by name calling in a full sentence request. So definitely we're gonna have to somehow train the child to start gaining the attention of the person. Let's say if I am holding out, let's say, a book, and the child would like to borrow the book from me. I mean, we're training her to say, "Teacher, can I? Why? I feel like I sound like someone's really calling me a teacher." So yeah, let's go ahead. Teacher, can I borrow the book? So I mean, having said that she is able to utter words and copy words from us. So yeah, that's where we're gonna begin. We want to have an enriched environment where I'm on the second point now. We're gonna have an enriched environment where we would like to fill in, let's say, the environment where there are things that she would normally request for. Because again, I mean, if we want the child to request for toys, we cannot place her in a room with no toys. I mean, does it make sense? We have to contrive the situations. So, like increasing an opportunity for the child to request. A perfect example is that, as if you want to go out of the door, you locked it from the inside with you, and before she goes out, she cannot actually open the door, and it's an opportunity for the child to ask for help, or to ask to teacher, please open the door. So so that's another way of creating the environment for us to really elicit the response that we've been actually working on. The next is the errorless learning. So this is a prompt where we would go from the most intrusive prompt to the least intrusive prompt. So at this child's level, we would want to start using the leading prompts. We don't uh, uh, do any more. What do you call this? We don't do any more the modeling prompt, where we would uh, model the words for the child and expect the child to copy us. So with her, we started to use the leading prompts, where we'll just ask, leading her to communicate to us. So questions like, "What do you want?" Use your words, or you say it better. or remember what you have to say if you want something. So these kind of leading prompts are have become very helpful for the child. um, okay, so for the familiar people, there are specific prompts as well, for us to really work on the communication part of this child. So you can set out a familiar people. There are specific approach that you can do. You have unfamiliar people as well. There is also a specific approach that you can do, because again, I mean, let's face it, that a teacher can can a child can respond differently to the teacher. A child can respond differently at home. A child can respond differently with the therapist. And that's what we want to bring all together. We want to generalize the skill. But again, in the beginning, us knowing the child's needs is that we just have to, put our prompts differently depending on how much a child would be able to function and learn the skill that we want to work for. So uh, I'll go down for the replacement behavior, and for all those behaviors that were listed above, the grabbing, the one word and phrase requesting, and what's the other one? Uh, uh, what we want for this child to really have is that when she access a preferred item, it could be a toy, it could be an activity, it could be a food, are restricted, meaning that, okay, I'm the child, I don't have it yet, I don't have, let's say, the french fries that I want to eat, I don't have the ball that I want to play with, I don't have, let's say, the TV time, if I want to have the TV. So that's what I meant when I say restricted, is that she will independently name call plus the full sentence request without occurrences of any of the target behaviors listed above. So a perfect example is teacher Carla, can I go to the toilet? So that's what we want to happen. That's what we want for this child to really have. And again, having a proper assessment to begin with, this is how we start to come up with. So I'll go down to the consequence manipulation. Um, this is where we'll list the kind of reward on how to reinforce a skill that you're working on. So I've put there a continuous reinforcement where we'll have to provide the requested item to the child for each and every time she calls the teacher's name and have a full sentence request. So and we'll have to discontinue providing the preferred item when the child exhibits any of the target's behavior listed above. So if you look at that, that's just one behavior target. And it could be very long. I mean, I think I've kind of went through it a little much longer, but yeah, I mean, I just want to tell you now, that's just one function of behavior. And here's another function, as listed as target number 2. Behavior maintained through automatic reinforcement. So this is what we would typically and normally hear as the stims. So with this child, she has this physical stereotypes where she would fiddle with her fingers in a very non-meaningful way. So that was kind of very how do you call that, a direct definition as well, because I mean, physical stereotypy could be anything, but again, knowing this child, this little girl, this is how her physical stereotypes are. She fiddles with her hand, in a very non-meaningful way. It's a different when she's counting, pero like if she's just sitting and doing nothing and are expecting literally nothing, they would just fiddle. She would just fiddle her finger. So we've kind of want to identify what really is and what's not. So I've written an antecedent modification the same way. We're using the visual schedule, a sensory table we've provided for her. We've listed the replacement behavior, um, and the consequence manipulations as well. So I'm just kind of trying to show you how a behavior intervention would look like, and what would it consist. Um, and after that, we have a list of the acquisition skills. So these are the list of skills that we are going to work out during the therapy sessions, or probably during a class with a teacher, with the guidance of the therapist, or at home session. So we would want to work on her greeting skills. I mean, in this kind of support, the behavior targets that you're working up, the ones that are listed above. Because again, if the child knows how to greet people, then definitely it's going to be easier for the child to gain the attention of the person where she would want to request for. We have another target skill where we're doing an echoic training, uh, just for her to get clearer approximations, clearer words, and a better understanding, because she tends to somehow eat up the sounds when she speaks, especially in a faster manner. So we'll have to sit her down, do an echoic training in a very natural way. So this can be applied in the class, where if they're having a free play, for example, and then let's say she's playing with the dog, or and then a teacher would prompt to do the sound of the dog, or to label and name, let's say, the animal. We have a skill, a specific program, a specific activity to work on gaining attention as well. So in her part, it's teaching her to gain the attention of the teacher by raising her hand. So, I mean, if they want to say something, she raises her hand. So at least that kind of sort out naman the skill to initiate the gaining attention. So the prompts are listed, the procedure is listed as well. I mean, if you can see it very clearly, and we've got to define the kind of prompts that we're gonna do, just for it to be very clear who would implement the program. We've listed an independent task completion as well. I'm gonna run this through this very quickly now. Uh, we've worked on the turn taking skill. We've worked on the voice modulation, because again, we're training her how to communicate to us using clearer words, and she tend to shy out and say words very softly. So we wanted for her, as her words progresses, we wanted her to somehow increase the volume and the loudness of her voice as well. So yeah, that's kind of how a tailor fit program would normally look like. I'm sure you've seen a lot of individualized programs, a tailor fit programs given to you by the teachers, given to you by the therapists. So again, what I was trying to point out here is that uh, we want to have, we as therapists, we as teachers, we want to equip ourselves with something that we know would help your children. So again, like working in partnership with Headway. So we're kind of trying to combine many different uh, forms of assessments, many different ways for us to identify your child, and in this way we can be confident that we can help your child in the best way that we can. Uh, so that kind of sum up my presentation. Um, Let me see if I have another slide. I'm not really sure. Yeah, just give us a minute. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I mean, I just want to leave you guys with a quote that actually is a line in a song that I've heard, and I just kind of remembered it last night. So that I mean, us talking about uh, us identifying your child, and for us to provide the best intervention and the help that you guys would need. So yeah, here it is. If you don't know, then you can't care. So if we don't know your child, then I don't think we can we can help you with anything that we can. So yeah, I think for us to care, for us to provide the help, is that we have to know your child, and we have to work all together. Like with the teachers, with the parents, with all the intervention team. So yeah, that's a song. That's a line from a song from Maroon 5. So uh, let me just go back to the first slide. I think so. Yeah, Sir Al, I think I'm done with my slides. So that's thank you very much. I hope that I was able to share something um that was actually based on how practical things could go, dealing with these children, whether it's in the school setting, or in the clinical setting, or in therapy session setting. So yeah, I mean, Sir Al.
Wow, thank you so much, Teacher Mark. So that was a very informative and insightful talk. So I'm sure that our live audience learned a lot from the talk. So we would like to invite our audience to ask questions. You can feel free to comment them in the comment box. If you have any questions, we will tackle them in the Q&A portion of the talk. So yeah, while we're waiting for our live audience to ask questions, Teacher Mark. Yeah, we have here a parent texter, and basically she's asking, how can yeah, so with the school, with the program that a school or maybe an interventionist would recommend for a particular child, how can parents follow up the program at home, or what can be their contribution for them to be able to follow through. Yeah, you were talking about the Tailor Fit program earlier. So, would parents have a role in
Yeah,
following
I mean,
through the program?
100%, and as practice, I mean, Sir Al, I'd like to share how how the practice that we've been doing, in partnership with us, like Headway and me. Sir Al would normally call me for a case conference, with the teachers, with the parents. In that way, we'll be able to give out recommendations, not just for the teachers, as not just being in the school, but for the parents as well, to follow up. So it needs a lot of constant communication, with us, with you, and again, for us to better communicate with you. um, that's when the understanding and the knowing your child would play best. I remember that every time Sir Al would ask me to come to school and hold a conference for the parents. And I always get excited kasi syempre, I mean, it's very rare that we get to sit all together and share thoughts and share the ideas, and with what we think would work best for the child. Kasi me being a therapist, some approach would work for me as a therapist. The teacher may have her different style that works best with the child. The parents at home would have a different learning style, a teaching style that would work best with their child. And imagine you put them all together, then that I think that we can say that that's something that the best that we can provide for the child. So to follow up with the with the program of your child is that first, I mean, the first step is for you guys to be equipped with a proper and a tailor fit program as well. So I mean, if you wanna let's say have a proper program, you call your therapist, or let's say you inquire in a center, you can inquire in school. I mean, here at Headway, for you to have a proper assessment. And I mean, when I say assessment, it can go in every single possible way. You come here, I come to your house, or we do the same thing. We do a trial class. Um, we do a lot of that. I mean, we kind of throw in a child to have a trial class just for us to see how he responds in a class. That kind of setting is something that would draw natural responses and raw responses from the child. And after that, we're gonna have to write the target skills, the program. We're gonna have to individualize. We're gonna have to modify as much as needed, as much as required, for us to be able to provide you the plan. And again, sometimes you don't really need to follow up with your therapist. I mean, if you have a very good therapist, and if you have a therapist, I think, who would actually know what they're doing, they're gonna initiate following it up on you. They're gonna tell you that, okay, mommy, we've reached this stage. Now you can target this at home. Or let's say, mommy, I've worked it out during my therapy session, and maybe it's time for you to apply it at home. So I remember one boy, a lovely family, where we had to target the singing. I like to pretend that that I know how to sing, but again, I mean, it is a very fun session. So when I was able to manage the child to somehow tolerate holding the mic, singing with the mic, and with the speaker on during our therapy session. So for me to be able to follow it up with the parents at home. So I kind of initiated to tell the mom that, okay, mom, try and sing with him, even though I'm not here, and just try to do it naturally as part of let's say your family activity at home. And yeah, voila, I mean, it went really well. So the follow-up may come from the parents, the follow-up may come from the therapist, the follow-up may come from the teachers. But again, the best way is that the follow-up should be coming from everybody. So I hope it answers the question.
Yes, and indeed, Teacher Mark is actually a very good partner of Headway when it comes to following through and also implementing the program for children. I think we have here Mommy Adrian comment. Thank you, Teacher Mark, for helping Aiden overcome his phobia with the karaoke.
You're welcome. And yeah, I mean, I actually think that I'm learning how to sing as well. So thank you.
Okay. Teacher Mark, earlier you were talking about the seeking of Headway's IEP with the behavioral intervention plan. So maybe can you give maybe our parents an idea of how it works in process, maybe basing on how you also experience it with the system.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I mean, going back, beginning with identifying the child. What does the child need? So we're gonna have to ask you to come in, for us to get the initial information that we need. Probably we may be needing some previous reports from you, if you had in the past, let's say a simple progress note from the old therapists, or let's say the old teachers, reports from the doctors. I mean, because that would kind of represent your child. So that's how it starts. If we need to have, let's say, simultaneously, um, I'm gonna be there on the side trying to observe and see what actually is going on. So the IEP that will be drawn from all from that standardized assessment kit that Headway the school would implement, would give the teacher the right approach on how to actually modify a specific curriculum, a specific lesson for the child. So we call it the differentiation, where they could be working on the same activities, but the targets are differentiated. The materials that the teacher is using is differentiated. So alongside having an IEP that is being implemented inside the school, inside the classroom with the teacher, whether it's online or whether it's a live class. Well, unfortunately, we're not having a live class right now. But again, having the IEP with the teacher and a combination of the behavior intervention plan, the behavior intervention plan would somehow boost the IEP that the teacher should implement, because the behavior intervention plan would look more on the behavioral and the response point of view. The IEP would look more on the academical point of view. So it's like the behavior plan would support the IEP on how the targets should move. The IEP would support the behavior intervention plan on what targets should we achieve in a certain amount of time. So yeah, I mean it actually works. It complements each other. So the IEP and the behavior intervention plan, it complements each other. I'm not saying that one will not work alone, but again, it's best if you have that two document. The teacher, the parents, the therapists are equipped with both of them. And here at Headway, that's what we are uh, kind of trying to make sure the parents that if we accept your students, we'll guarantee and we'll make sure that we can provide the best setting, the best approach that we can have. So whether it's online, whether it's face to face, whether it's a home program, whether it's a blended program, so working all together, I think that's something that is very unique with Headway. I mean, I've kind of enjoyed being in partnership with Headway for the past few years. Seeing it in a very dynamic way, not just not just in a school's perspective. So Headway kind of opened a window where we can view things in a very broader perspective. Not just as a teacher, but working side by side with the therapist, working side by side with the parent. As I've mentioned, that home blended program, I think that's one very good approach that Headway has implemented over the past few years.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Mark. So we have here a situation shared with us by a parent on our live feed. So let me share it here on the screen. Okay. Okay, let me just read it. I think it's okay. So we have here, tanong ko lang po, yung anak ko may autism spectrum disorder. Mula 3 years old, nag-undergo na po siya therapy. Pero until now, one word pa din siya kung magsalita. Pero mahilig po siya makinig ng mga kanta. Actually, mas magaling pa siya kumanta kaysa magsalita ng diretso kung meron siyang mga gusto. Wala nagturo sa kanya na kumanta siya lang talaga mag-isa, pero hindi po niya kaya magsalita ng diretso. Pero bakit ganun? Alam niyang awitin yung kanta ng diretso, pero hindi siya makapagsalita sa amin ng diretso. Let me flash it here a
Okay.
little for the.
I think there's a 8 years old po ang anak ko. Nag-stop lang kami ng therapy last March mula nang mag-COVID. Okay. I kind of parang nakikita ko po on yung how do you call this, yung situation na na pag when mostly in most of the cases that I've been handling, especially dun sa mga bata na with autism, um, it's not actually hindi talaga yung words sometimes ang kailangan nating tignan. So sometimes it's not the word itself. It's not how the child pronounce a word itself, but on how the words would function to the child. I understand. Magaling siyang kumanta, pero hindi siya kaya niyang kumanta siguro ng mahabang salita, pero hindi siya makapagsabi ng gusto niya ng mas mahaba. It's because hindi naman po kasi talaga, probably I'm not saying again, I'm not giving you a definite recommendation. I'm just trying to base it on how the question has been raised. So pwede po na hindi yung words ang kailangan natin tignan. Kasi pwedeng wala namang problema on how the child talks. Ang problema is on how the child would use the word to communicate. So it's the behavior of communicating. It's the behavior of talking. It's not the talking itself. It's not the words itself. It could be it's the way the child needs to use her words in order to tell you one thing. So for now, pwedeng hindi niya nakikita yung sense of baka kailangan kong sabihin kay mami na mami, I want to eat an apple. Pwede rin natin tignan na if the child would only say one word, is that he would get everything that he wants. So let's say the child says apple, and then here we are trying to give the apple and without actually encouraging him to say oh, mommy, I want an apple, or teacher, I want to have a book. So it how it sounds like, how it looks like may not be very important for now in relation to the words. I'm just limiting what I'm saying right now in relation to the words. It may not be important how it looks like. It may not be important how it sounds like. It may not be important how much words she would say in let's say labeling or singing. I think the most important thing that you have to work out is how the words would function to him to communicate whatever he or she whatever he would like to request for. So kasi singing is different, communicating is different. So the behavior to communicate, that could be the limited one, and we'll have to look at many different areas. Pwedeng he is allowed to say one word lang and then he gets the things that he wants. Pwede namang hindi masyadong napapractice. Pwedeng pag nagturo lang siya, nakukuha na niya yung gusto niya. So definitely, the behavior to increase the use of words to communicate is not being worked out. So we would love to help you sort that out so that I can better give you a proper recommendation. I mean, maybe we can provide a proper behavior plan for your 8-year-old child. I mean, you can call Sir Al or Headway at any time to schedule that, so that at least we can really take a look on what's going on when it comes to that, if they're concerned with the communication and then the talking and everything. So,
Okay, so we have
I hope
here.
it makes sense.
We have here another question, teacher. Is a child that can actually read and talk, but he or she cannot communicate what they want to say, like how they're feeling or if they need help, still classified as nonverbal.
Hold on a minute. If a child can actually read and talk, but he cannot communicate what they want to say, like how they're feeling or if they need help, it's still like non-verbal. If I try to define it in a behaviorist point of view, I mean that could be very confusing. So I think I would just classify that as a um, non-verbal, perhaps limited to communication, pero the child can be verbal when it comes to labeling. So I think this is a similar case to the first question, Sir Al, na the child is able to sing words, but is very limited to saying word when asking for something. So I think these are very similar a case where the child would use a different way to make her words function, which is just to communicate, which is just to label, to read and talk, but not actually to communicate with you. I don't really classify that as nonverbal because again, verbal would mean differently in a behavior's point of view. But again, I mean, maybe we mean that okay. I'll put it. I'll put a different term just for us to be clear. Let's term it as oral, like the oral language, the vocal language. Uh, so, kasi verbal in a behavior's point of view could mean doesn't mean that it has words. I mean, it could be pointing. That's a verbal behavior to request. But again, okay, let's put it as a non-vocal way. So, but again, if I say non-vocal, I would be specific only to communication. Probably the way for the child to communicate is to point, to grab, or to cry, or to, let's say, just nod. So those are the non-vocal ways to communicate. Pero we're hoping to work on the vocal way to communicate, which is the talking. So yeah, with the question, if to classify as non-verbal or non-vocal, I would classify that non-vocal specifically to the communication, but not through labeling, not through reading, or not to any other activity where he or she would use her vocals or his vocals to to function.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Mark. We have here another question from Mommy Catherine Estrada. Okay, let me flash it here. Yung anak ko po may global development delay. May mga tinuturo ako sa kanya and now nakakatuwa kasi nag-improve na madami na siyang alam na work. Ano pa po ang pwede kong gawin para mas maituwid pa niya mga words niya? Ang hate niyang gawin ay magsulat pero pag pinagsulat ko siya, naisusulat naman niya pag sinasabi ko yung letter at yung number na hanggang 10 lang. Ano pong pwede kong gawin?
Okay, I mean I'm happy to hear na syempre nakakatuwa na the improvements are there, madami siyang alam na work and everything. So there are a lot of many different activities that we can do. I mean, I'll give you a specific example. For example, when yung sinabi mo na para maituwid pa niya ang mga words niya. So there could be a lot of activities, you know, like you can, let's say, pwede kang maglagay ng for example, animal toys in the table, and then you can set up a farm set where you know you'll make it very functional for the child using her words to during play. Now let's say okay, let's say I'm the horse is running, for example, or the horse is eating some grass, and then the child's turn to talk. You know, he'll get, let's say, a chicken, and then he'll say the chicken says quack quack. So it's working on the vocals of the child which is what you're working on right now, in a playful manner, which the child could enjoy. So it's not always what we want to understand is that it's not always a flashcard. What's this? What's that? Say this, say that, do this, do that. It could be anything. It could be watching a favorite TV show. Yeah, watching a favorite TV show, and then let's say when the TV flashes a ball, you pause it, and then the child will say, "Mommy, that's a ball." Turn on the TV, 2 seconds, and then let's say a car would pop up, and then you pause it again, and then you you ask your child, "Okay, what's that?" And then the child will say, "That's a car." What color is the car? The car is red. And what does the car say? The car says beep beep. So there are many things. There are many different things, and especially the most enjoyable ones, the natural activities that I mean, it's like a simple form of bonding with your child. So, like what I've said, it doesn't always have to be very formal. It doesn't always have to be very structured. uh, if you're currently having a therapy session with your therapist, um, you can ask for more recommendations from your therapist on what kind of activities you can implement at home. The writing naman, it's good that he's starting how to write. I mean, if it's just for 1 to 10, I mean, it takes a lot of practice. But again, if you want to advance the writing, you make sure that whatever it is that you are asking for your child to write, it's something that your child is familiar with. You know, you don't want him to write, let's say, the word elevator. If let's say the elevator is not something that he is familiar with, you may want to ask him to write the word dog, ball, car, the things that he's familiar with, so that he can start to apply the functionality of what he's writing with, and again combining with the talking part and everything. So I hope that that kinds of answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Mark. And I think this would be the last question for today from Mommy Magat Jean. Aside from his or her family and teachers, how can you make other people adapt and accommodate one's exceptionalities?
Aside from his family teachers, how to make it. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of programs that um, schools would offer, like for example, like this kind of webinar hosting that Headway is kind of promoting regularly. It helps other people start to understand um, that they need to adapt, they need to accommodate everyone's exceptionalities. And I believe that every one of us have different exceptionalities. You know, I mean, we cannot. Sometimes it's just that it's not that kind of significant for us to get the intervention, but unfortunately, for other children would need to have a proper attention and intervention. So listening to this kind of talks, I mean, there were the previous wonderful speakers that came before me. I think yesterday we had another one. Looking back at those things, reviewing this, watching it again, would actually help other people understand. I understand that sometimes to learn to accommodate and adapt to one's exceptionality is just within the family and the teachers area. And when they start to go out in the mall, for example, let's say you are being stopped, for example, by a security, because the security doesn't really know what's happening to your child, for example. I mean, it happened to us a lot of times, and sometimes we have to step in, um, explaining to the security that, okay, we have a condition, this is what's happening, and these are what the child condition is, and this is what we need to do. So and if you are kind enough to kind of adjust or help us, or let's say make give a way for us in order to accommodate the condition of this child, is that we would definitely appreciate that. So that's a very good question, and I'm hoping that the government, I'm sure the government are also uh, having their own ways to disseminate information regarding different exceptionalities, on how to actually deal with them and adopt. But again, that may not be as specific as you want to be. Like for example, like right now, this can be not specific to your child or to the teacher, or to the child's need, as what the teacher and the family would require, because I'm speaking in a very general point of view. But again, once you have a proper assessment, once you have the proper plan, be it a behavior plan or be it an individual educational plan, then you as parent as well would start to share information to other people that will help you accommodate and adopt with your child's needs. So it's more of helping each other out, one another. So I'm sure Headway will come out with the next few presentations from different speakers. I mean, I would love to speak for another time if they will give me a chance.
Of course, teacher
Probably
Mark.
talk about a uh, very specific topic. Probably, I mean, so yeah,
Yeah, I think a very interesting thing to discuss also, teacher Mark, would be the syncing. How do the collaborators of a child's learning
yeah.
experience work? How do we sync
I, I,
that
I,
process?
actually, to the last audience who raised a question, I think it's Sir Al, it's kind of similar. Eh? The last talk that I had is the behavioral intervention at home.
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
so
true.
it's kind of some. I mean, if you can, ma'am, if you can go back to it, probably you can, get some idea of how we can actually share information to adapt, and to accommodate one's exceptionality apart from just us teachers and the parents.
Yeah, especially these
Yeah, thank
days
you for that question.
that yeah, some of our parents are also directly handling their children, so maybe they're wondering how they could modify or how they could accommodate, given that maybe most of the concern of most parents is they don't have any SPED background. So, what kind of support? Maybe that's another good topic
Yeah,
to talk about soon, Teacher Mark. And yeah, I'm sorry, Teacher Mark, we have here another question. So maybe we can, because it is a very interesting question
yeah,
from
sure, sure.
Edo. Let me just flash it here. My child, yeah, I think it's a little bit cut. My child and I visited a psychiatrist before the pandemic in March last year. Before the lockdown, she had depression due to her academic requirements. The psychiatrist gave her prescribed her happy pills. My child said it worsened her depression, so we stopped visiting the psychiatrist. Last week, she told me that she wants to visit a psychologist. Because of that, we visited a psychologist who is also a psychometrician 2 days ago. She said that she feels better. So I think it's a bit cut. Let me see if I can see it here. Hold on.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I've kind of gotten the idea of the
Yeah.
situation. Actually, I had a very very similar case. I think like 3 weeks ago lang din ata. I mean, I had a mom ask me with a very similar situation with her daughter naman. So again, it went on the same experience that that poor child was given a medicine to, but again, um, I mean, it was already given. The depression has been triggered by the academic requirements. So, um, talking as a behaviorist, in a behavioral point of view, I wouldn't want I don't think that I would be able to make the child cope up with the academic requirements if she's taking the happy pills. I'm not against the psychiatrist. I'm not against the psychologist. No, I mean I'm just talking from a behaviorist point of view. Now, now what I would rather sort out, as you've identified that the depression is due to her academic requirements, is the academic requirement itself. That's where I'm gonna look at. That's where I'm gonna target. That's what I'm gonna hit. The academic requirements. Now, if, for example, if your child would need to submit, let's say, a 20-page um, book review, let's say a 20-page book review that has to be given in 2 days. Now, if the teacher knows the condition of the child, if the condition has been relayed to the school and to the teacher, now the teacher's role is to start to adapt and modify and adjust the requirement from the child. Let's say, okay, instead of doing a 20-page book review, maybe you can just give me up to 15 page book review, for example, if that's what her capacity is, in 2 days. Or you can do it the other way around. You can submit your 20-day you can submit your 20-page book review in 5 days. So instead of giving the 2 days, you're gonna extend it for 3 more days. So that can give the child a little bit of adjustment and preparation time for her to work it out. Or it could be a combination. Cut it into 15-page book review in 5 days. So different exceptionalities, different adjustments, different modifications that a child would need. So um, Ma'am Jocelyn Cerezo, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm speaking from my heart that if I was to give you a recommendation, although I'm not saying anything yet, I'm not saying any concrete yet, I would target where the depression was coming in. And in your case, the depression, as you've mentioned, was due to the academic requirements. So, we can actually tap the school and, hey, maybe we can do something about it and help us try to sort out the depression of one of your students. So, I mean, I would love to hear more about it. I mean, if you would like to contact us, me, Sir Al, you can just give us a call anytime, and we'll I'll take a look on what's really going on.
Okay, so that's very informative, Teacher Mark. And we have here a question from Mami Digneneng. Okay, so her question is this school for children with special needs and exceptional kids? I think we can respond to it. So, Headway School for Giftedness caters to all kinds of children. We are an inclusive school. We cater to gifted, twice exceptional, those with special needs, and typical students. And actually, Sir Mark's talk for today is very relevant to what the Headway School for Giftedness caters for, or what the Headway School for Giftedness is all about. Yeah, because Headway School for Giftedness caters to the unique learning characteristics of every child. So instead of the child adjusting to the program, it is the school program which adjusts to the child's learning characteristics. So we look at the child's unique learning frame, the characteristics, the strengths, and the needs. So that was what Teacher Mark or Sir Mark was talking about earlier. So understanding the profile of the child and providing the proper accommodation that is fit to the child's characteristics. So that is what Headway School for Gifted is all about. So we cater to all kinds of children. So we follow the K-12 curriculum, but we modify and enhance, as Teacher Mark mentioned earlier, through individualized and differentiated programming. Okay, so I think that's it for today, Teacher Mark. Thank you so much. So
Thank
it's
you. Thank you,
very
Charles.
inspiring. I
Thank
think
you.
it's not only very informative; it's also very inspiring. Yeah, especially for our audience and for those parents who are also wondering how could they be able to accommodate their child. Yeah, so yeah, maybe they're also trying to see maybe they could. See that the child is being frustrated in the current learning conditions. So it requires really understanding of the child's profile for us to be able to provide the proper accommodation. So we're very grateful to have you this afternoon, Sir Mark.
Thank you.
So
Thank
and
you. Thank you for having me.
yeah, and as our expression of gratitude, we'd like to share with you a certificate of appreciation. So let me just share my screen, Sir Mark, for
I
a
mean,
while.
what is that a taco? No. That's why.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, let me just okay, fix the window. Okay, so Headway School for Giftedness would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Mr. Mark David Magbanua in acknowledgement of his knowledge and expertise in doing the parenting webinar entitled Understanding and Accommodating Exceptionalities at Headway School for Giftedness on March 6, 2021, signed by yours truly and Ma'am Maria Luz Estudillo, our founder and directress. So thank you so much, Teacher Mark, for gracing us this afternoon. We
Thank
are
you.
always having you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for our viewers for your time today. So, yeah, and I think that's it. And have a great weekend, everyone. Goodbye.